Why did I hear so much empathetic laughter during that opener? Why is it that we can all relate to those cringy date stories? Whether it's been us or someone we know, or we've watched something on TV, or there was like a cringy, embarrassing scene in a movie. I don't know about you guys, but I get like secondhand embarrassment. Like if there's a bad, embarrassing scene in a romantic comedy or something where like someone likes somebody and they get really awkward and it's terrible, I get secondhand embarrassment and I like can't watch it. So regardless of where we're at in this, we've all had some kind of experience with those terrible date stories. This wouldn't be as fun for you guys to sit through if I didn't get to tell you a few of my own terrible date stories, now would it? We all need a little incentive for this, don't we? So do you guys want to hear a couple of my just like awful date stories? But then I'm going to tell you one of Molly's, my best friend Molly, and that one's funnier. Okay, so Brandy says yes, because Brandy went to high school, both of us, you're going to die. Okay, so which one should I pick from my terrible date repertoire? Okay, I'll probably tell you guys two. So one time I went on a double date. I was probably this was probably my first year of college. I went on a double date, and the restaurant that the guy picked was terrible. I don't even remember what it was, but it was not even cute. It was not a fun time. So as you ask people out on dates, put some effort in, you guys. But anyways, so we get to the date, and it's a double date, and so there's me and the guy that asked me out, and then this guy and a girl, I don't know, I think the guys were roommates or friends or something like that. And so we're at the restaurant, and we settle in, and at first the guy's kind of quiet. The guy that asked me out, he's kind of quiet, and I'm like, okay, maybe he's nervous. And so he, is quiet in the beginning, and then we order food, and he's still kind of quiet, and then we eat our food, and he's still kind of quiet. You guys, this man went the entire date without speaking. He did not talk the whole time. It was me on a date with the other two people, is what this was. It was horrendous, you guys. It was terrible. And what makes it worse is as soon as I get in my car to go home, the guy texts me and is like, hey, I'm so sorry. And this is my dumb guy voice. Hey, I'm so sorry. I just get really frustrated with whatever the friend's name was when he just owns the conversation. I'm like, own the conversation? You didn't contribute. You didn't even try, my guy. You didn't even put any kind of effort. It was terrible. Needless to say, I never went out with that guy again in my entire life. Or there was the time where so people were trying to set me up with this guy, and I meet him, and we're at a birthday party or whatever, and one of the guy's family members shows up and just enters into the conversation I was having with him and just proceeds to spill out all of these, I'm not gonna get into details, but very controversial views on deep, intense topics of the world. I'm trying to have small talk with this guy that I thought was kind of cute, and I'm like, okay, cool, this could go somewhere. But then family gets in there and is like, hey, let's talk about everything that's on your Apple News today. And I'm like, oh, okay. I got so uncomfortable that I just literally left. I just left, and the guy ended up texting my friends that tried to set us up and was like, what happened to her? And I'm like, I'm gone. I couldn't handle that anymore. I could not be a part of the awkward. It was too bad. I told you, I get secondhand embarrassment for other people. I was in the thick of it. I'm like, my heart's too tender. I can't handle this. It's bad. Okay, but you want to know the worst date story of all time? It was not my own, it was my best friend Molly's. And I texted her 2 days ago when I was getting ready for church. And I was like, oh my gosh, Molly, can I please tell the chicken nugget story to the students? And she was texting back, I should have taken a screenshot of our text message. And she was like, oh yes. Okay, so one time, my best friend Molly, see, if you're friends with someone who talks in church, you have to know that all of your stories are fair game for sermons. That's just going into it. If you ever are friends with a pastor or a preacher, they're gonna ask you if they can tell your embarrassing stories so that people can follow Jesus. It's just taxes or something. So Molly, I'm texting her, I'm like, Molly, can I please tell a chicken nugget story? She says yes. So long time ago, back when Molly was single, this guy asked her out on a date, and he says to her, hey, I would really love if you would come over and if I could cook you dinner. I would love to cook you dinner. Yeah, you guys see where this is going. He promises her a home-cooked meal, which sounds romantic, right? Wow, that's so sweet, all the time and effort. How old-fashioned and sweet. Yes, of course, I would love if you would cook me dinner. So Molly is like, yeah, that'd be great. So she shows up to his house expecting, I don't know, maybe some, real plates and, I don't know, a vegetable option, some kind of thing that makes this look even like a roll, something that looks like a normal dinner. She gets there, and this man has on some baking sheets, a frozen pizza, and some chicken nuggets. And that was the dinner that he gave her on the date. And she walked in and she literally said, "What is that? Is that the dinner?" You guys, bad date stories. They're a dime a dozen. You guys, the truth is that dating can be fantastic. Dating can be awesome. Dating is a part of life, and God wired us, listen, God wired us for relationships. And when you're ready, dating can be a really, really great part of that. And it can be so awkward and so challenging, and guys can make you chicken nuggets when you thought you were gonna get a dinner, and what even in the world. And so that's why for the next 3 weeks, we're gonna have this conversation, rightly called Save the Date, as in, please save my dating life. Please help me get out of these bad dates, because the truth is that there are some things about dating that are really funny, and we can all laugh about how silly they are, like guys who ask you out on dates and then don't talk to you. But there are also other parts of dating that can be really, really hard, right? Parts that aren't as easy to talk about, like heartbreaks and feelings and other people getting involved and friendships being affected by dating and boundaries and what should I be doing, what shouldn't I be doing, and how far is too far, and what do I do when I like somebody, and what if my mom doesn't want me to date? And there's a million different things that can be really challenging when it comes to dating. And so that's why we want to have this conversation, not to give you a list of a million things not to do, not to make you feel bad, because that's not the point. Like I said before, relationships and dating can be one of the biggest gifts from God. This series is about how can we handle dating and navigate relationships in a way that is healthy and is going to help you guys to have the best experience possible, and hopefully avoid some pitfalls and some dumb chicken nugget dates that maybe some of us have gone through in the past. And now here's the reality, is that some of us in the room probably just cringed in our seats like a million times, right? Because we're like, oh my gosh, we're talking about this in church, this is awkward, this is weird. And that's real, you guys. In all reality, the church hasn't always done listen. The church has not always done the greatest job of navigating this conversation, is just point blank. In the past, the church has often not talked about this part of life at all, or has only talked about a big giant list of what not to do in the world of dating. And the truth is, high school, that neither of those extremes are healthy, right? Because dating is complex, and it's more than just a list of rules, and it's much too important to just not talk about, right? And so we believe here that church should be one of the safest places in the world to have real life conversations, and that includes dating and relationships, but it's not always easy to do, right? It's kind of like, anybody ever travel with someone who doesn't like to admit when they're lost? Like, who doesn't want to stop and ask for directions, right? You just want to keep going until you figure it out, and you kind of like, you're driving around and you know that by now your GPS has led you somewhere very terribly off course, but you're like, I don't want to admit that I'm lost right now because then other people would know and that's embarrassing. Like, I just want to figure it out on my own. Can't relationships kind of be like that, if we're honest? Like, don't we want to just sometimes figure it out on our own and then tell people the finished product? Like, let me figure out how to handle this and then we'll talk about it. But the truth is that we all need people in our lives that can speak into that. And so when it comes to our dating lives, who we like, who we're Snapchatting, what we're doing with people that we're Snapchatting, we can have the tendency to not want to talk about it all the time. We might be afraid that people are going to judge us, or that we're going to get in trouble, or maybe we're embarrassed because we don't have someone that we're dating. I know I was in that camp in most of my high school years, that I usually felt more embarrassed because I wasn't dating rather than I was dating. And so you could kind of go on either end of the spectrum for that. But is keeping our dating lives essentially a secret from the people that we trust really the best way to go about it? Or would it be better to just admit that maybe we could use somebody to kind of put us back on the GPS? Or maybe we just might want an opinion about what turn to take, so to speak, on the journey? Could it be that actually talking about these things that might sometimes be hard to talk about, could that actually be better? Could it be worth it to take that step? And so tonight, we're going to jump right into that. And the good news is, although the Bible doesn't have a lot to say about dating, because people didn't really date back then, it was quite different of a culture, The Bible doesn't have a lot to say about dating, but the Bible does have a lot to say about the decisions that we make and how to navigate some ups and downs of life. And so tonight we're going to look at a verse from the book of Proverbs. Everyone say Proverbs. Fantastic. We'll do this again soon. Proverbs, and Proverbs is a book of wisdom. Most of it is thought to be written by a guy named King Solomon, who, the story goes, asked God for wisdom one day. God said, I'll give you anything you want to King Solomon. And King Solomon said, I want wisdom so that I could lead your people well. And so God said, since you've asked me for that and not anything else, not riches, not houses, not palaces, I will give you all that wisdom and more. And so it is thought that Solomon wrote down all of these nuggets of wisdom that God had given him, and we bound them up and put them in the book of Proverbs so that us, thousands and thousands of years later, could still learn from the wisest guy that ever lived. So if I'm going to ask somebody for advice on something, especially something complicated like dating, I might want to ask the wisest guy that ever lived. I mean, that's like a nice place to start, right? And so we're going to jump in right here, Proverbs 11:14. And I want you guys, high school, you're smart, so I want you to think of this as a metaphor. So kind of get your abstract hats on. And this is what we're talking about tonight. This quick little proverb says, without wise leadership, a nation falls. There is safety in having many advisors. Without wise leadership, a nation falls. There is safety in having many advisors. And so here's what I think when I read that in terms of our conversation here tonight. Let's look at this first part. Without wise leadership, a nation falls. This kind of makes sense, but it's also one of those good common sense, bring you back to the earth kind of things. Picture this, high school. You are the leader of your life, right? You are preparing to go out and be adults in the world, whether you're in 9th grade or 12th grade. High school is really a lot of you getting ready to go be an adult. And that's where you're going to be. Right now, you're growing in your responsibilities, but once you hit adulthood, you are responsible for your decisions and you are making choices for your life. And so when this says that without wise leadership, a nation falls, you can picture yourself as leading the nation of your life. If that makes sense, it's kind of like a metaphor, right? You lead your life and you govern and you make decisions that affect your personal life, right? And so I kept reading this as I was getting ready for this talk. I kept reading this as, without wise leadership, a nation falls, but there is safety in having many advisors. But then I realized that that semicolon there is actually more interesting than we think it is, because it's almost like this last sentence is like a little... it's like a little tagline. It's kind of like a little tidbit of advice right at the end there. So we hear the author of Proverbs saying that we need wise leadership in a nation, and then it's almost like, I kind of picture like King Solomon like walking out the door and he's like, by the way, there's safety in many advisors. Like, it's like he gave you this thing, like, yeah, you need wise leadership for your nation. Psst, many advisors. It's kind of like that. That's how I read this. And so this sounds like a tip for how to lead the nation of our lives well, if you ask me. There's safety in having many advisors. This sounds like a tip for how to be a good leader of the nation of our lives that we are in charge of, that we are entrusted with, the decisions that we make. There's safety in having many advisors. And so think about that word advisors. What would an advisor do to maybe a king or someone in charge of things? They would probably be experts in certain fields. Like if I were a queen reigning in a nation, I would probably have an advisor for like foreign affairs or finances or different things that were experts in those fields. And so maybe if I wanted to know, how do I make a good decision in terms of spending our nation's money, I would probably go to my financial advisor. If only I had one of those. And I would ask them for their opinion because they knew a lot in that area, right? In this way, we see that a nation can be led successfully when there are many advisors. Why is that? Why is it that a nation would be led well when there are a lot of people and a lot of voices weighing in on it? Well, probably because if you're like me, when I'm the one leading the nation of my life, I'm in the middle of that. And so it can be hard for me to think objectively and to think clearly about a lot of things because I'm in the moment, right? And especially when it comes to dating and relationships, like I remember one time there was a guy that I dated that a lot of my family didn't really like, not for any serious reasons, just he kind of rubbed everybody the wrong way. And I remember being in the middle of that and being so offended by everybody not liking this guy because I'm like, I was in the middle of it, right? I couldn't see clearly, I couldn't see objectively. Now, newsflash, that relationship didn't work out because clearly, right? But if you fast forward a little bit after that relationship, then I can start to see what they saw. I can say, oh yeah, there was safety in my many advisors. It was a good thing that I took their opinion into consideration, even when it was different than my own, because when you're the one in the middle of making your decisions, it can be really hard for you to see all different angles of it and all different sides of it. And so there, friends, and lies the danger of us keeping really any big thing in life to ourselves, but especially when it comes to this really important life stage about dating and relationships. When we choose to do that in silence and without involving the people that we trust, then we're putting ourselves at risk for kind of that proverb to come true for us that, we might not have the benefit of having many advisors that we can go to and say, hey, you've got experience in this area, or hey, you have been through this thing before, or hey, I know that you, not so long ago, maybe you were dating, or whatever it is. We can go to these people that have experiences beyond our own and just say, hey, what do you think about this, right? And it might not always be easy to do because we don't always know what we're going to get on the other end, right? I get it. And the truth is, friends, that you get to pick. So you don't have to go and involve the entire world in your dating life. I would recommend you don't. I don't do that. I don't tell you guys about who I'm dating when I'm dating that person because I would do that with other people, right? You guys get to choose who you go to when you talk about these things. Who is someone that you trust? And it's not that you trust them to tell you what you want to hear, but it's that you know that they will tell you in love whatever it is that you might need to hear, friends. And so it's being brave and being vulnerable to go to the many advisors that are at our disposal, you guys. You guys are set up so well here where you've got your small group leaders and church staff and maybe even adults that you live with at home or teachers or coaches or other people that you can go to that you trust and you can get their opinion on some things. Or even just say, hey, what do you think of this person that I like? Or when the big things do happen, you guys, and you might need someone to talk to about something that's gone on in a relationship, you'll have those safe people. Just like anything else in life, that you'll have those safe people to go to. You'll be safety in your many advisors. Real quick, as we're wrapping up, did any of you guys go on the Blue Ridge mission trip my first summer here? Raise your hand. Drew, Miss April. Anybody else? So you guys are going to know the story I'm about to tell. We went whitewater rafting that trip. Do you remember? It was the most fun, but was it not wild? And it was wild. It was crazy and so fun. So we went whitewater rafting on a mission trip. You know how we often take you guys on like a fun outing for your mission trips? So we went on a whitewater rafting excursion for one of our mission trips. And the thing that I remember most about it, you guys, is that there was a guide that had to go with every single boat. So every boat, you couldn't leave until you had your guide with you. And the guide's job was to take you through the course the proper way, to stop when you needed to stop. They would make sure that you saw the best sights. So if there was a good view to see, they would take you to that spot and help you see mountains and the rest of the rapids and just incredible things. They would take you to see the best views, and they would even help you have a bunch of fun. Like my guide was wild, and he would let us jump out of the boat when it was safe to do so, right? He didn't let us jump out of the boat in the raging rapids, because then we would have died, right? He let us jump out of the boat to have fun when it was safe. He let us do that thing where they call it riding the bull. I don't know if y'all's guide did that with you. It's very risky, but we did it. It was so fun. You sit on the front of the tube, and you hold a strap, and then when you go over a rapid, it's like, it gives you a little ride. You get tossed about and stuff, but he didn't have us do that in the unsafe parts. He had us have enough fun and enough risk and enough adventure to make the ride really, really fun and memorable. And he also took us through in a safe way. He would tell us to sit down when we needed to sit down. He didn't tell us to sit down and hunker down in the boat to be lame. I mean, the guy's job is whitewater rafting. You can't really be lame when you do that. He would tell us to sit down when we needed to, because if we stayed sitting on the outer edges of the tube, something could have happened to us. We could have fallen off and maybe gotten really hurt. So he would tell us when to hunker down. He would tell us when to make sure our life jackets were on. He would tell us, don't jump out here because there's rocks and you could get hurt. And he would tell us, look at that view. Hey, I come here all the time. Make sure you see that part. Hey, if we go up just a little bit further, you're going to be able to see everything. Guys, the guides aren't there to ruin the ride for us. They're there to help us have the best experience possible and to keep us safe while we do it. And that's what we mean when we say there's safety in many advisors. We get guides to guide us through, to show us the best parts, to keep us safe, help us avoid some pitfalls. But the number one thing is that the guide stays with you the whole time. Even if I would have jumped out at a wrong point, I'm pretty sure my guide would have reached back and grabbed me by my life jacket and put me back in the boat, right? He wouldn't have left me in the rapids. The guide stays with us. And ultimately, we look to Jesus as that guide, who in John 10:10 says that the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy, but I've come that they would have life and have it to the full. That's Jesus. Jesus comes not to ruin the ride, but to give us the best one, to help us have life to the full. And that's what we get when we trust him with these moments in our lives, and we look to the people he's given us as our safety of many advisors. And so tonight, as you head off to small group, I want you to think about who are those people in your life that could be on your team, especially in this area of dating and relationships that can be hard to talk about, but it's worth the conversation. Let's pray. Jesus, thank you that you want us to have life and have it to the full. You want good things for us. You want safety and health and fullness and good experiences for us. And Lord, we are grateful that you wired us for relationship and for community, and that you have given us good adults in our lives to be there for us and to be guides, and maybe share with us some things that they have experienced that would help us to make the best decisions that we can in terms of dating and relationships. God, if anyone here has particular hurt from dating and relationships, particular wounds, Lord, I would just pray that you would bring healing in those places, and that maybe even tonight this could be a safe place for them to share with someone that they trust, to get that off their chest and remember that you are a safe place. God, the good people in our lives ultimately point us back to you and remind us that you are the safest place we could ever go. With our hurts, with our hang-ups, with things we've done, with things we hope for, with things we want but don't yet have. All of these things, God, you are the safest place to go to. And so, Lord, would the people in our lives be reflections of that? And would you help us go to the many counselors, the many advisors that you've given us in our lives, so that we would have the best experience we can when it comes to this really exciting and what could be a great part of life, of dating and relationships. We love you in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, guys, go ahead to small groups.